Morning. Oh, hi. All right, so, great. Thanks, Gwen. All right, so we're going to start off with a question today. It's an easy question, and you're going to know the answer, and I know your answer, but we're going to ask it anyway. Have you ever had negative thoughts? Answer is yes. For everybody is yes. Like, I can think of certain people or situations where I know instantly I am not going to be thinking good things. And I think we all have those people or those situations that can kind of bring that on for us. So really the question that we should have asked is like, how can you stop yourself from having negative thoughts? And a lot of times people will think, well, thinking negative thoughts, that's just who I am, right? That's just how my brain works. And usually we end up putting ourselves in one of two categories here. And you guys know these categories. These are, you are either an optimistic person or a realistic person, okay? And so if you're wondering which one of these I fall into, it is not the optimist. I don't like the word pessimist. I prefer the term realist because when you think of these two people, an optimistic person, they see things, they see a situation or a person the way that it could be. They see the potential in the situation or the potential in the person and they think, oh, this could be so amazing. And then people like myself look at a situation and most of the time we will see it for how it is right now. Or if you start getting a little bit on the pessimistic side, you'll start to see where it could go wrong, right? But what's really, really fun, and I do mean this, what's fun is when you can pair an optimistic and a realistic person together. So I am the realist to my husband Jason's optimism. And when we can get like on the same thought train or in the same headspace, his optimism is he'll see a situation and show me where it could be. And then as the realist, I see where it is and I can create a plan to get to what he sees. So when you can put these two together, they work together really, really well until the pessimistic side of my realism goes, maybe not though, okay? So sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes being a realist or a pessimist can kind of land me in a negative headspace. And a lot of times, I won't say Jason, but if you wanted to turn around and kind of point your finger at him, it's okay. He's not going to mind. Sometimes an optimistic person will tell me, well, you just can't think like that. You don't know that that's going to happen. And like the heck I don't. It very well could happen. And things could go really, 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 really badly. Okay? And then I'll launch into a story about how absolutely horrible things can get. Okay? So I do that a lot, actually. But we should not do that, and that's why I'm going to talk about it today. So there was actually a study done where they took people, they split them into two groups, and they were all piano players. So they took one group of piano players, and they said, for 5 days, we want you to sit down at your piano and play the same 5 notes. Play them, 5 times a day for 5 days. So this group of people would sit down, da-da-da-da-da, and they'd just play the same 5 notes. Then they told the second group of people, they are also piano players, do not touch a piano for 5 days. Sit down, hands in your lap, imagine yourself in your head. So the only thing they're doing is imagining yourself sitting at the piano, playing those same 5 notes. See in your mind, da-da-da-da-da, over and over and over for 5 days. So you had people who were playing and people who were just imagining it. Then they brought everybody back, and what they found was that on a functional MRI scan, the exact same areas of the brain lit up and grew throughout that week. It didn't matter if they were actually playing the piano or just imagining themselves playing the piano, the same parts of their brain lit up and grew throughout the week. So just imagining something can cause the reactions in your brain as if it's actually happening. Why? And the study concluded with this. The study said your brain can't tell the difference between real and imaginary thoughts. To the brain, everything is real. So think about a little kid. A little kid, they can be very, very afraid of the dark. They can sit in the dark and then they start to imagine, oh my gosh, there's something under my bed. And then it escalates and they get more scared and more scared and more scared until it's 2:30 and you have a phantom of a child standing over your bed staring down at you. Mommy, I'm scared. Okay? So the brain, to that child's head, the brain, that imaginary threat was real. Or think about how you respond to stress, right? Stress usually kicks in one of two responses. There's a couple others, but the main ones are fight or flight. You come up against a situation, your first thing is you are going to fight or you are going to run. So when you're in a stressful situation, your body reacts by producing adrenaline and cortisol to either get you ready to fight or run away, right? But those exact same responses will kick in whether the threat is real or whether the stress is imaginary. It still kicks in that adrenaline and that cortisol to get you ready because your brain can't tell the difference between it being a real stressful situation or you imagining a stressful situation. So like, if someone were to text you, hey, we need to talk. Most of the time, your brain is like, this is not good. This is definitely not good. You have no idea what they want to talk about, but chances are you've already thought, oh, they're mad at me. They might be mad at me for this, so this is how I'm going to fight that argument. Or if they're mad at me about this, I'm going to fight about this. And you've already got 3 different fights happening in your brain, and you don't even know what they want to talk about yet. But to your brain, that threat was real, and you have amped up your cortisol and your adrenaline, and your brain is ready to fight, and maybe that person just wanted to talk about what they wanted for dinner. And you're like, you're ready to throw down, and they're like, I don't know, spaghetti or tacos. But your brain is actually having a fight, and the other person doesn't know. Okay, so this is not good for our brains. And what we need to do is we need to take our thoughts captive, which really just means to examine what we're thinking about. The fancy psychological term for that is metacognition. And what that means is to just think about thinking. So thinking about thinking about your thoughts, it's like this twisty little loop thing. But really what it means is we are just thinking about the thoughts that pop up in our head, okay? So the Apostle Paul wrote something in a letter to his friends in Philippi, and I think it can help us a lot here. And he starts off by saying, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing, fix your thoughts on. And he's going to give us a list of things to think about, but what's really important is this is right at the end of his letter. And he has said a lot of really important things. Actually, if you read the book of Philippians, there's a lot of things in there that we've talked about on Sunday. It's actually a really good book. But what he wanted to leave towards the end of this letter, what he wanted one of the last things for them to think about is to fix your thoughts. And this is kind of a weird translation. If you go back to the original Greek it was written in, the word fix, it actually means to dwell. So not to fix something that's broken. He's not saying you need to fix broken thoughts. What he's saying is these are the things he wants you to dwell on. The things he wants you to sit in, to stew in, to really, really let just emanate from your brain, right? So here's the list of things he wanted us to dwell on. Fix your thoughts on whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, and whatever is admirable. So, this is actually a checklist, okay? Each one of these things are connected to the next. So when you're sitting there and you're thinking about something, is this true? Is it honorable? Is it right? Which just means just. Is it a justified thought? If at any point the thought you're having doesn't line up with one of these, it's not something that we should think about, or it's not something that we want to do. So, we're going to use my life as an example. At the end of this month, my husband and my 3 boys are going on a fishing trip to Lake Michigan. They're going to meet up with one of Jason's high school buddies. They're going to charter a boat. It's going to be great for them. And what you may not know about me yet is I really, really hate water. I don't enjoy swimming. I don't go in a pool if my feet can't touch the ground. I have never jumped in a pool where my head would go under. I've never gone off a diving board. These are things, I really like oxygen. I enjoy breathing. And putting myself in a situation where that can go away is terrifying to me, okay? So, this is where it all comes together and everything you know about me makes sense, right? So the idea of Jason and my 3 boys out on a boat in what is basically the ocean in the middle of America freaks me out. Okay, so I've already thought about, well, what am I gonna do if the boat, my kids are listening and now I'm going to transfer my fears to them, so pray for them. What if the boat tips over and they all go down and then I'm stuck at home alone with my parents in the basement, right? So then I was like, okay, well maybe I just tag along, right? So it's a guys only trip and mom, because that way, if the boat flips, I'm there and we all go down together, right? So, so bad. Thanks, Mike. So if we take this is where my realism turned more into pessimism, right? Because I'm thinking about all the horrible things that could happen. This is where we take my thoughts and we hold it up to the checklist, right? So first, is it true? Could be. You don't know that they're gonna be fine, right? Could be true, so we're gonna keep going. Is it honorable? I mean, it's debatable. I mean, is there anything more honorable than a mom worried about her kids? I think we're fine. We're going to keep going. Okay? Is it right? Which means, do I have justification for thinking these things? I do not. Okay? Is it pure? Is it lovely? Is it admirable? Nope, no, and absolutely not, right? So, my thoughts can take me to a dark place that I don't want to be. And my thoughts can make me into a person that I don't want to be. Okay? And this is why Paul says to fix your thoughts, to really dwell on these 6 things. I had to count quick. 6. These 6 things, because these are the things that are going to keep us from veering into pessimism or negative thoughts. Okay? And then the thing he ends with is think about things that are excellent and praiseworthy or worthy of praise. When I sit around and dwell on what could happen to my husband and my children, it doesn't line up with what Paul's saying we should think about. When we fake argue with someone in our heads, it's not true. It's not honorable. It's not right? It doesn't line up. So when we're thinking about things, when we're thinking about things that are not on this list, our brain can't tell the difference. Right? I'm one of those people where if I sit down and I really imagine that boat going down and my being alone, I will start sobbing because my brain cannot tell the difference between that event actually happening or me just imagining it. To my brain, that is 100% happening in that moment. Okay? And what Paul is telling us is we need to choose what we think about. We have to be aware of the thoughts that we allow to pop up in our head. And that choice, what we choose to think about, will determine if we have thoughts that line up with that checklist, that create that more of an optimistic worldview, or if we imagine those negative thoughts and create worries and anxiety and fear. Okay? Why is it important to practice this? Because when the poop hits the fan and everything gets real, what you've practiced in your mind is what your brain will default to. Whichever path you normally take, optimism and trust or realism and fear, whatever path you take is what your brain will go to. So it will happen without any conscious effort on your part because it's what you've practiced. So because we like things that rhyme and Michael likes Dr. Seussisms, this is what I've come up with. When things all fall to poo, what your brain practiced is what it will do. Okay? So whether you've practiced trust and optimism or whether in your day-to-day life you are practicing realism and fear, whatever happens, when something pops up in your life and things start to fall apart, whatever you have practiced is what your brain is naturally going to do. So I have one of my boys, he's 11, his name is Andrew, and last October, he started having stomach pains, right? And he's always kind of had a dairy thing where it was just he could have a little bit, but if he had too much, his stomach would hurt. So last October, it started to just get a little bit more frequent. We were like, oh, you probably just had too much dairy today, or, oh, we forgot to take a lactate pill or whatever. So we went with that for a couple of months. And by December, it was every night. It was keeping him awake at night. He was in our room. I can't sleep. It was so much pain that he's almost in tears because his stomach hurt so bad. So we made an appointment with a pediatric gastroenterologist, and that appointment went so horribly. It was so bad. They ended up giving him the exact opposite medication of what he needed, and he got violently ill to the point where we were in the emergency room. And so we spent January through probably April bouncing around to different doctors, doing blood tests, doing genetic testing, all different kinds of things to see if we can try and nail down, like, why does your stomach hurt? And during all of this, like, he's still trying to be an 11-year-old kid, right? He's trying to go to birthday parties, but sometimes he can't eat anything that's there. And so he's struggling. Or sometimes we went on a family vacation, and there was one whole day where he and I ended up just staying in the room together because he was in so much pain he could not leave. So we've kind of gotten to the point where we think it's a little bit managed. We have another specialist appointment with someone at a clinic at Mizzou in October. So by the time we get to see that person, it'll have been a full calendar year where I have had the opportunity to practice doing this. Right now I've had 10 months to practice teaching my brain what to do when things fall to poo, right? Because I am someone who thrives on answers. I am someone who worries when I don't have them. And it has been 10 months of just living in my own personal nightmare because there's nothing I can do besides just being there. Because the worst thing I've ever done during all of this is I went on the Google, and I know, I went on the Google and I searched children's stomach pain, and if you want to give yourself nightmares, that is what you go home and Google, right? So I have the opportunity to stop going on to Google and to decide which path I want my brain to take, right? So sometimes, if you've ever wondered why people preach what they preach about, it's because I have been currently learning this for 10 months. I have needed this more than anything else, just for Jesus to remind me that even when I feel helpless, and even when I see a realistic situation, that Jesus sees the optimistic side. Jesus sees where it's going and where it's headed, and I have needed to learn how to practice watching where my thoughts go. Because the more I dwell on what has happened, or the more I dwell on Google search results, the farther and farther I get from the peace that God has promised me. And that's what Jesus came for. He came and promised us peace. And one of the things I've had to remind myself is he didn't promise us that things would be easy. He didn't come and promise that if you follow Jesus, everything is going to be easy for you. What he did promise is that whatever comes up, whatever world crumbling situation you're in, he's with you in it. And that is what he's promised us, is that he will see us through it, okay? Because holding on to worries and fears or negative thoughts, all that does is it drags us down and it weighs us down. And Jesus knew that, and he addressed that with his disciples. This is what Jesus told us to do. He said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Jesus knows what you're worried about. He knows what feels like a heavy burden. He knows what weighs you down. He knows what situations pull you toward a negative viewpoint. He knows if you're worried about your marriage. He knows when you're worried about your health. He knows when you're worried about your job. He knows those things that your thoughts dwell on. And all he asks of us is, come to me with your weary and heavy burdens, and he will trade those for rest, right? And then he says this. He says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." So he's asking that we come with an open mind, ready to let go of the worries and fears that weigh us down. And I'm one of those people where I feel like when I worry about something that I am in control. There's nothing I can do, but as long as I'm worried about it and I'm thinking about it, I am the one in control. And that is the exact opposite of what Jesus is asking us to do. He is asking us, when he says, "Take my yoke upon you," what he's asking is for us to let go and trust. That he is with us in the situation, that he is going to help us through it, right? Trusting that he will be with us as it all gets figured out, as we work through health crises or whatever situation that you're thinking about. And then he finishes by saying, "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Whatever your thoughts dwell on, Jesus knows about it, and he promises to be with us in all of it. And that's why Paul gave us that checklist, right? Jesus is telling us, come to me with the things that are burdening you. Come to me with the things that weigh you down. And then Paul gives us a checklist for how to make sure we do that, okay? He gives us a way to check our thoughts, to check our thought patterns, and make sure that those paths that we create in our brain make it easy for us to turn to Jesus. Because remember, whatever thought path we normally head down, that is the path of least resistance for your brain, and that is the path it will take every single time. Your brain likes to travel the same well-known paths. So in your everyday thought life, if you are creating paths where you think about things that are true, honorable, right, pure, and lovely, and excellent, when everything starts to fall apart, that is where your brain will naturally go. And those are the thought paths Paul is trying to get us to take. Because when we pay attention to those negative thought patterns and we examine that against Paul's checklist, that checklist makes it easy for us to turn to and trust in Christ, knowing that he's with us. Let me pray for everybody. Jesus, I want to thank you for today. Thank you that we can all come together and have the opportunity to worship you and to remind each other what it means to follow you. That as we grow to follow you, that you care what we think about, that you care about what thought patterns we have in our brains. And Jesus, I ask that you help us to notice those thought patterns more frequently. Help us notice when we are bending more towards that realism or that pessimism where we aren't trusting in you, or we create those moments where we are scared. Jesus, help us to recognize those thoughts. Help us to find things that are true and honorable and pure and lovely in each one of our situations. Help us to take those situations or those people or those circumstances, whether it's our marriage, our finances, our relationships in our family, and help us to bring those to you. Those things that are burdening to us and things that weigh us down. Help us to bring those to you so that we can trust you and know that you have peace for us and you will be with us in each one of these circumstances. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, as the worship team comes